We are looking at Nehemiah, and we've read this week in our through the Bible 90 days, First, Second Chronicles, and Ezra and Nehemiah, and so we're going to focus on Nehemiah. It's an interesting part of the story. Nehemiah and Ezra are those who individuals who are involved in restoring the temple, restoring the city walls, which a generation earlier had been destroyed by the people of Babylon, by the armies of Babylon. So the passage, at least part of it, and what I want to do here is kind of end with and kind of give title to the last phrase here. It says, "Then Nehemiah the governor, Ezra the priest, and teacher of the law, and the Levites, who were instructing the people, said to them all, 'This day is holy to the Lord, your God. Do not mourn or weep.' For all the people have been weeping as they listened to the words of the law." Now, you have to understand, these people had gotten to the point where they just didn't do much with the word. In fact, it's possible that many of them, because they had been so surrounded by people or been exported by people who didn't speak Hebrew, which was the language of the Bible, they probably, of the Old Testament, they probably spoke Aramaic, which is a cousin language to Hebrew. It's not the same as Hebrew. And so as the word was read to them and they heard it for perhaps the first time for some of them ever, and certainly the first time in a long time, they were able to understand what the word of the Lord was to them. And there was probably some conviction that came with that as well. And so they listened to the words of the law. And Nehemiah says, "Don't weep." He says, "Go and enjoy choice food and sweet drinks, and send some to those who have nothing prepared. This day is holy to our Lord. Do not grieve, for the joy of the Lord is your strength." And that's the term that I want to take with us today. Okay? I want us to think about today, the joy of the Lord being our strength, finding our strength in the joy of the Lord. Now, the task that these people had was to rebuild the walls of the city and to rebuild the temple. It had been destroyed. This is 538 BC plus. This is getting down toward the end of the 6th century BC. We know that they started rebuilding the temple right around just shortly after 538 BC, and they concluded it in about 516 BC. So about 22 years to build a replacement temple or a new temple, what we call the Second Temple, because the first one that was commissioned and built by Solomon and a lot of the materials prepared by David had been destroyed back in when the Babylonians invaded. Our task is to build a church. I like that task a lot better. A lot less lifting, right? My wife and I ordered some dirt to fill into our front of our place where we needed some dirt, put some new crops and plants. So we ordered, I think we ordered something like 3 yards, which doesn't sound like very much, does it? That's 3 cubic yards, okay? That's a lot of dirt, and exactly right, Pam. And shoveling it. And that was when I realized that when you're 60 years old, it's a lot tougher than when you're 30, okay? So I had to stop every few shovels and sit down and rest because my back was, I don't have back trouble per se, but boy, I did that day. Wow. A lot of physical lifting. I can only imagine, there you go, I can only imagine what the task of these people was to build this temple and the stones had to be put into place and so forth. Well, our task is not that physically strenuous, but it is an important one, and that is to build a church, to continue to build a church. The key to both is that the joy of the Lord is our strength. David said, "I was glad when they said to me, 'Let us go to the house of the Lord.'" I wonder how many times we, and I think we're all guilty of it, we wake up on Sunday morning and say, "Oh, it'd be so nice to just go back to sleep." I think about that. Okay? I had somebody, one of my former students was doing a little survey of his Facebook friends online, and he said, "What's the number one reason that you go to church?" He's trying to find out, trying to gather some information. And what's the reason? People say, "Well, the fellowship and the music and all that." And I said, "I have to go. I'm the pastor." Okay? Now, seriously, I mean, obviously there's a lot more to it than that, but we all have days like that sometimes. We just don't want to get up and we just want to check out for a little while. Well, the key to both of these is that the joy of the Lord is your strength. Okay? Guilt is not going to get it done. Finding the joy in the task is what's going to get it done. And that's what we need to do. So, Let's think about that. Now, again, the book of Nehemiah, where are we? Well, a lot of things have happened in our reading in this past week, or just in the dates of the Bible in general. First of all, in about 944 B.C., Solomon built the temple, the first temple. His father David wanted to build it. In fact, he spoke to his personal prophet Nathan and basically said, "Why should I live in a house when the Lord lives in a tent?" And without even really listening much more, Nathan said to David, "Whatever it is that you have in your heart to do, go ahead and do it." And so Nathan the prophet leaves, and he goes back to his place. And as he's going there, he is confronted by the Lord, who says, "I don't want David to build a house for me." And ultimately, it's because he's a man of blood. He's a man of war. And so I want someone else to build it for me. But what God does say to David, "I don't want you to build a house for me. I'm going to build a house for you." That's pretty special. Now, what he means by that is the family line, Solomon and the kingdom and the nation of Judah, and eventually the line of the Messiah. So about 944 B.C., the Temple of Solomon is built, and you can see here the laver and the brazen altar here. In 931 B.C., when Solomon died, the kingdom was divided. So we're well into that period now. Right? Israel is the northern kingdom. Judah is the southern kingdom. All of these two kingdoms together, in yellow, Israel and Judah, were one nation of Israel. But there was a division within the kingdom, and those of you that have read know the unwise decision that the son of Solomon, Rehoboam, made, and how that divided the kingdom. Right? There was a secession of 10 of the 12 tribes who formed that northern kingdom of Israel. That was in 931 B.C. In 722 B.C., almost a little over 200 years later, this northern kingdom of Israel was captured by the Assyrians. Very cruel and horrible nation that slaughtered en masse. Right? When people talk about ISIS, the terrorist organization decapitating people and that sort of thing, they learned that from the Assyrians. I mean, that's been going on for millennia. Right? So this is what the kind of cruelty. So the Assyrians come in, and they conquer this northern kingdom of Israel here, and they take the people captive, and they spread them all out. If you put them with other people that can't speak other languages, they can't conspire and plan against you because they don't speak the same language, they don't worship the same gods, they don't have the same culture, so they're inherently distrusting of each other. Right? So you have the Assyrian captivity of the northern kingdom. That northern kingdom is never reconstituted. They never come back and reestablish themselves. So the people are out there, and a lot of them are intermarried with other nations, other peoples, but the kingdom itself never reconstitutes. Then in 586 B.C., the Babylonian captivity of Judah, and that's when that temple that Solomon built was destroyed. And that was in 586 B.C. In 538 B.C. is when the people of Persia defeated Babylon. Right? Now, unlike the people of Babylon who said to the Jews, "No, you're not going anywhere. You're staying right here. We're going to Babylonianize you." Right? In other words, you're going to learn our language. You're going to learn our customs. Remember when Daniel and his three friends, Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah, whom you know better as Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego? Those are their Babylonian names. Okay? I'm going to pick the best and the brightest, Nebuchadnezzar says, and I'm going to convert the nation of Judah into Babylonians, and I'm going to change them from the inside out. And of course, Daniel and his three friends can't do that. They can't eat the king's meat. They can't worship the king's God. They can't worship his statue. Well, the Persians were a bit different. The Persians were more than happy to allow conquered peoples to go back to their homeland, to rebuild their cities, even practice their religion, as long as they remained in submission to the Persian authorities. Because they believed that a conquered people that is able to practice their own faith, live in their own land, have their own customs, have their own traditions, even if they pay homage to Persia, they're still easier to manage. They're easier to deal with. A happy people is an easier people to oversee. So between 538 and 516, this second temple was built. And this is the task that Ezra and Nehemiah have, which is to move the people of Israel to do what God wants them to do. Now, it's going to kind of go in limbo for a while. They're going to kind of quit doing it for a while. So the prophets Haggai and Zechariah are going to come along and say, "Hey, you got to get at this. You ever wonder why your you take money and you put it into a bag that seems to have a hole in the bottom. You ever notice why you never seem to have enough? It's because you've neglected your responsibility to the house of the Lord, to rebuild the temple. So after some time off, they got back at it. Kind of like I would encourage you. You say, well, I've been trying to read through the Bible. This is a bad week. Oh, I get it, okay? But I'm going to be like Haggai and Zechariah. I'm going to say, get back at it, okay? And we'll learn together, and we'll have fun, and we'll discuss it. So this is the time frame that we're talking in. So Nehemiah, along with Ezra, Ezra's a priest and a scribe. Nehemiah is the governor of this particular region. Nehemiah is working to try to get the people to get back to work, or to get to work, and rebuild the walls of Jerusalem and rebuild the walls of, or rebuild the temple. That's got to be a tough task. Now, there's a lot we can learn. I like the title of Chuck Swindoll's book. Chuck Swindoll wrote a book on the book of Nehemiah, and it's called Hand Me Another Brick. That's a great title. Hand me another brick. In other words, I'm trying to build a wall here. I'm trying to get something done. So help me out. Either, lead, follow, or get out of the way kind of attitude. And I think in terms of our service for the Lord, sometimes we allow ourselves to get distracted by the things that don't really matter, and we don't get to the task of what it is that God has called us to do. God reminds me on a regular basis that I'm not here to become famous. I'm not here to be praised and lauded. And I'm here to do a job. I'm here to do my part in helping to make First Baptist Church the best church that it can be. And I need your help in that, because I can't do it alone. I'm looking forward to being here in the summer and being able to focus a bit more of a full-time kind of basis on that task. Got some plans, got some thoughts for the summer as to what we're going to do. But that's what we're all called to do. So what I want to do this morning is just take a look at what I see are three phases in this. And there's a lot more to this in the book of Nehemiah. But I want to look at the challenges that the people had. And it starts out with phase number one, and that is the importance of prayer. The importance of prayer. In Nehemiah chapter 1, it starts out with Nehemiah sort of telling us his story. Now, it is long since after the destruction of the temple. It is long since after the destruction of the walls of Jerusalem. Nehemiah is in Persia. In fact, he has a very high-profile job. He is the cupbearer to the king. So he lives in Persia. He's surrounded by the Persian people, and he wants to know what's going on back in Jerusalem, some 800 miles away. And he says in chapter 1, it says, the words of Nehemiah, son of Hakaliah, he says, in the month of Kislev, in the 20th year, while I was in the citadel of Susa. Susa is a palace. That's what he means by a citadel, the king's palace. Hanani, one of my brothers, came from Judah with some other men, and I questioned them about the Jewish remnant that had survived the exile, and also about Jerusalem. How are the people that are still back there? Not all the people were deported when the Babylonians came through. Now the Persians are in control. How are the people that are remaining back in Jerusalem and Judah, how are they doing? Okay. And how about the walls of the city? Okay. How about the city itself? Well, he gets some bad news. He says in verse 3, they said to me, those who survived the exile and are back in the province are in great trouble and disgrace. The wall of Jerusalem is broken down, and its gates have been burned with fire. There's no security. So after the conquest of the Babylonians by the Persians and the allowing of the Jews that wanted to go back to go, not all of them went, after they go back, Nehemiah asks Hanani, one of his fellow Jews, how are things back in Jerusalem? He says, not good. Not good. The people are not doing well, and the city walls look like they burned with fire. He says, when I heard these things, I sat down and wept. For some days I mourned and fasted and prayed before the God of heaven. Nehemiah has in mind, I think, what he wants to do, but he knows he needs the Lord's blessing if he's going to do it. And he prays in chapter 1. He says, Lord, the God of heaven, the great and awesome God who keeps his covenant of love with those who love him and keep his commandments. Let your ear be attentive and your eyes open to hear the prayer your servant is praying before you day and night for your servants, the people of Israel. I confess the sins we Israelites, including myself and my father's family, have committed against you. We have acted very wickedly toward you. We have not obeyed the commands, decrees, and laws you gave your servant Moses. So maybe one of the reasons Nehemiah says that things aren't going well is that we have not confessed our sin. Maybe what would help our church grow is if we all kind of got serious about whatever sin might be in our lives. And I don't know what that is. I don't. I mean, I know myself, sort of. I don't know if anybody fully ever knows themselves. You ever learn something about yourself? That's kind of a freaky thing, isn't it? I didn't think I was that way, but I guess I am. I've always wondered whether I'm claustrophobic. I don't know why. I know that it runs in the family a little bit, but I've never really felt like that. And then one day I got stuck in an elevator. You know what? I'm a little claustrophobic. So I had my bag with me. I had my cell phone, fortunately. And I literally lay on the floor of the elevator and said, I'm going to be okay. And I called security. This was at Cornerstone. I called security and I said, hey, I'm in the Hansen Center in the elevator and it's stuck and I need somebody to get me out. And about 15 minutes later, he was able to open the door. He got there fairly quickly and opened the door and I got out. Yeah. I learned something about myself. Okay. Well, maybe God needs to tell us something about ourselves. Okay. I'm not going to begin for a moment. I knew a pastor one time who said that something horrible happened to him, and he says, well, I've searched my life, and I can't find any sin in my life that caused this to happen, so it must be something that's one of you did. I'm serious. Okay? I'm not saying that. Okay? I have enough of a difficult time just keeping track of myself and my own sin, much less yours. Now, we can have those conversations as we need to, and I want to help us all grow, but I have to focus on me. So the question becomes, is there any sin in my life that's preventing First Baptist Church from being all that it can be? That's a tough question to ask yourself, but I think that we all need to do that. He goes on, he says, remember the instruction you gave your servant Moses, saying, if you are unfaithful, I will scatter you among the nations. But if you return to me and obey my commands, then even if your exiled people are at the farthest horizon, I will gather them from there and bring them to the place I have chosen as a dwelling for my name. They are your servants and your people, whom you redeem by your great strength and your mighty hand. Lord, let your ear be attentive to this prayer of your servant and to the prayer of your servants who delight in revering your name. Give your servant success today by granting him favor in the presence of this man. Now, this man is the king. He's going to go to the king, and he's got a plan of action. And he's going to show up in chapter 2 in the king's presence, and he's going to look sad. And you don't look sad in the presence of the king. As the king, don't want none of your sad, okay? You get your sad out of here. I don't want that here. But he does. He walks in, and apparently he must have been a trusted advisor because the king says, why is your countenance fallen? Why are you sad? And he says, well, how can I be happy when what's going on with my people? And God blesses him. The king offers him assistance and materials to go and do what he wants to do. But it started with prayer. I need your prayer. Okay? I can certainly benefit from your constructive criticism, but I need your prayer. Your constructive criticism needs to come to me, not anywhere else. It needs to come, and that's true of all of us, okay? Trustee, deacon, deaconess, children's worker, whatever, TV person, whatever it is, okay? Gossip doesn't help anybody do anything any better. What we need to do is talk to one another. So if I need your advice and your help, I would be more than happy to take it. Now, say it nicely, okay? Tell me one or two things you like about me first. That'll make me feel better. You know, right? We're all that way, okay? To coin a phrase, to use Jesus' words, I worry more and more about the one person who doesn't like something I do than the 99 who do. Okay? That's just me, okay? That's my upbringing. That's the way I was raised. I was raised in a home where my acceptance was largely performance-based. I'm just being real straight up honest with you here. And so if you don't like my performance, it makes me think that maybe you don't like me. Or maybe whatever. That's just the way I am, okay? I'm just being transparent and just kind of confessing that to you this morning. You've heard me say this before, but I want to say it again. I need your prayer, all right? I need your encouragement. I need your prayer, and where it is helpful, I can use your constructive criticism. It's done in a spirit that's appropriate. Okay? But if I've got, Jerry's not here right now, so I can talk about him. Okay? Sorry, Jerry. Maybe you'll see this. I don't know. Jerry's not here. Jerry's back in Florida. But if I want Jerry to do something better than what he does, it's not going to help me to talk to you and say, boy, I wish Jerry did a better job of this. That's not going to help. Might make me feel better. Might make me feel a little superior. But it's not going to help. Okay? I need to go to Jerry and say, Jerry, you're a good guy. I love you. But, okay? Now, I'm only picking on him because he's not here. Okay? That's the only reason I'm picking on him. Now, I have nothing in mind. I'm just saying that's the basic principle we take with us. So the principle of prayer, okay? If we prayed as much for each other as we often spend time criticizing each other, I think we'd be a lot better off. And if we went directly to one another with our concerns and our constructive criticism, okay, that would be helpful, right? So the importance of prayer. Okay? I don't say that for any particular reason other than just in general. Okay? So the importance of prayer. Let's understand. Nehemiah understood the importance of prayer. We need to understand as well. Phase number 2, I like this one, working well with others. Okay? It's like that's a category that's on your report card, right, when you're in grade school. Plays well with others, works well with others, whatever it is. Okay? I want you to look. We're not going to read the whole chapter, but Nehemiah chapter 3. Okay? This is interesting because of all of the different names. Somebody has said that, okay, you read Nehemiah chapter 3, and it's like, well, this person did that, and this person, and these people were over at this place, and these people worked on this place, and these people worked on that place. It'd be like having a work day at church. And we put it in the bulletin. We put a big, long bulletin insert. Well, all these people cleaned the sanctuary. These people worked in the parking lot. These people vacuumed the carpets all over the place. And these people did this and that and this and that. And you say, okay, all right, that's good. You want to make sure you don't exclude anybody, These people did all that. Well, that's good. You know what the implication is? They all worked hard, and they worked well together. They each did their job. They did what they were called to do. They had certain gifts and certain abilities. Okay? When it comes to doing work, okay, around the house or something like that, or in a place like this, one of the things I love to do, I really enjoy doing, I love to paint. Paint walls, paint windows. I love to paint. I just like it. Okay? Now, I know some of you don't. Terry, you and I have had that conversation. Terry doesn't like to paint. All right? So if he's around here and I'm around here, I'll do the painting. Give him something else to do. Okay? So that's fine because we all have gifts, we all have interests, we all have desires. But we all have a job that we can do. And so these people, I'm not even going to read this. Just look at the names. Just read through, if you haven't read through it already, read through Nehemiah chapter 3 and look at the very specific way, okay? I'll just give you one verse, verse 3. The fish gate was rebuilt by the sons of Hassanah. They laid its beams, they put its doors and bolts and bars in place. Meremoth, son of Uriah, the son of Hakaz, repaired the next section. Next to him, Meshullam, son of Berechiah, then the son of Meshezabel, made repairs. And next to him, Zadok, son of Banah, also made repairs. The next section was repaired by the men of Tekoa, but their nobles would not put their shoulders to the work under the supervisors. Okay? So you got a little bit of we're kind of, that's beneath us, But for the most part, everybody's doing their job. Everybody's doing their job. They're all working together. So you and I read Nehemiah chapter 3, and as you can tell from what I just said, it's a lot more of that. There's a whole lot of names that are hard to pronounce. Yeah, it's true, okay? It's true. So call Val, ask her, because she's one of our residents. She did a great job. But that's what's there. But don't look past that and realize what it means for these people to be working together. If we're going to grow this church, we've got to learn to work well with others. We've got to learn to work. First of all, we've got to learn to work. We've all got something to do. We can all do something. Now you say, well, I'm well advanced in years. All I can do is pray. That's the most important thing you can do. Okay? But if you can do other things, then we'll do things. Okay? What can we do? What can we do to make, when the service is over, do you look around? Are there any visitors, people you haven't recognized before? And you want to greet them and say hello and welcome them. That seems like a small thing, but it really isn't. It's a huge thing. So as we build a church, just as Nehemiah built the wall, how can we work well with others? Okay? Phase number 3. Understand this. Anytime you attempt to do the work of the Lord, you will encounter opposition. You will encounter opposition. I was looking over this again this morning as I was getting ready to kind of, get in the car and come here. And First of all, it says that they had opposition from outside. Verses 1 to 3 of chapter 4. When Sanballat's not even one of the Israelites. He's a Horonite, okay? He's from a different nation, different people. When Sanballat heard that we were rebuilding the wall, he became angry and was greatly incensed. He ridiculed the Jews in the presence of his associates in the army of Samaria. He said, "What are those feeble Jews doing? Will they restore their wall? Will they offer sacrifices? Will they finish in a day?" Of course, they're not going to finish in a day. What he's suggesting is they're just going to do so little, and it's going to be of no consequence. They'll be done in a day. Can they bring the stones back to life from those heaps of rubble, burned as they are? Tobiah the Ammonite, who was at his side, said, "What they are building? Even a fox climbing up on it would break down their wall of stones." I can just imagine I can imagine Sanballat and Tobiah and a bunch of their buddies sitting around, having a beer and wings, and just saying, those Israelites, can you believe what they're doing? What are these knuckleheads? They're going to take these charred bricks, and they're going to build, they think they're going to be done in one day? What are they thinking? What is wrong with them? And then, the other guy, Tobiah, says, "Yeah, you know what? I bet by the time they get done with that wall, if a fox jumped on it, it'd probably collapse." They were being mocked by outsiders. And we'll have that sometimes. We'll be made fun of by outsiders. It happens. There will be opposition. Sometimes it's easier to deal with opposition from without rather than within. But there is opposition from within. All right, now, this is where it kind of hits a little close to home. Nehemiah chapter 5. I'm just going to read the first 5 verses. And I read this, and especially I was just like, okay. "Now the men and their wives raised a great outcry against their fellow Jews." Now they're supposed to be building the wall. They're supposed to be building the temple. They're supposed to be restoring the city of Jerusalem to what it was. Instead, the men and their wives raised a great outcry against their fellow Jews. Some were saying, "We and our sons and daughters are numerous. In order for us to eat and stay alive, we must get grain." Got to have something to eat. Got to have food provided for us. Others were saying, "Well, we're mortgaging our fields and our vineyards and our homes to get grain during the famine." In other words, this is what it costs us to do this. We want to make sure everybody knows what it's costing us to do this. Still others were saying, "We've had to borrow money to pay the king's tax on our fields and vineyards. Although we are the same flesh and blood as our fellow Jews, and though our children are as good as theirs," where have you heard that before, right? "Yet we have to subject our sons and daughters to slavery. Some of our daughters have already been enslaved, but we're powerless because our fields and our vineyards belong to others." Now what was happening here was this. The Jews themselves are working on rebuilding the wall, and they're working on rebuilding the temple. And all they're doing right now is just griping to each other about each other. It's sort of like trying to one-up, "Well, I had to mortgage my vineyard. I had to mortgage my field to do this." Well, sort of like one-upmanship, But the joy is going out of it. That's why he says the joy of the Lord is your strength. So there will be opposition. As we try to continue to grow First Baptist Church, we will probably find there will be those on the outside who kind of, "Yeah, really?" Okay. And there are those on the inside who will cause trouble as well. I feel like we can handle people on the outside. It's if we start turning on each other that we have problems. We've got one task to do. It's like that little saying, right? You had one job. We have one job, and that is to grow First Baptist. Now, there's a lot of different responsibilities. Go back to chapter 3. There's this place and that place and this place and the other place. There's a lot of things to do. There's evangelism. There's discipleship. There's being welcoming. There's all sorts of, there's education, teaching. There's all sorts of jobs to do, but they all focus on one goal, and that is building and rebuilding the church. Finally, the last point I want to bring to our attention is near the end of the book of Nehemiah, offering thanks to God, thanks to one another, and giving to the Lord as a sign of our thankfulness. This is all a part of the task that God has called us to do. In Nehemiah chapter 12, verses 40 to 43, and there were more, I could have picked more, but it says, "The 2 choirs that gave thanks then took their places in the house of God. So did I, together with half the officials, as well as the priests, Eliakim, Maaseiah, Miniamin, Micaiah, Elioenai, Zechariah, and Hananiah with their trumpets, and also Maaseh, Shemaiah, Eleazar, Uzi, Johanan, Malchiah, Elam, and Ezer. The choirs sang under the direction of Jezrahiah. And on that day they offered great sacrifices, rejoicing because God had given them great joy. The women and children also rejoiced. The sound of rejoicing in Jerusalem could be heard far away. So there were two things that affected these people. One was they were thankful. They were thankful to God. They were thankful for one another. And they were thankful for the privilege they had of rebuilding the walls of the city and rebuilding the temple of the city. And we have the opportunity to express our thanks and appreciation to one another for the work that we do in helping to build First Baptist Church. The other thing is they gave. They gave graciously, they gave generously, and they gave willingly. So I want to mention one more time, going into Easter Sunday, our special Easter Sunday offering. If you are not a member of this church, this has nothing to do with you. Obviously, we'll take a gift from anybody that wants to give it, but this is not your responsibility if you're not a